it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna go public, and I've noticed it does take a little while for maybe people to be able to see it. So
I'm done.
let's give us like 15 seconds from now. I'm gonna click it now.
Okay, I'm going to comb my hair.
Hi, Megan.
Hello, Megan.
Hi, Chris. Oh, hi, Ming-Chen. Hi, Bill.
Okay, so I see the attendees filling in, so that's awesome. So I will call to order the school committee meeting for Monday, May the 4th be with you, 2020. And I'm going to start with open public forum. I know we've been leaving that off. If people have questions that they have not seen on the agenda and would like to ask them now or really at any time, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Other reminder is when you are not speaking, panelists and those that we promote to panelists later, please remember to mute your microphone so that it's best hearing for the person who is speaking. So for attendees, again, it looks like we have 17. Please use the Q&A function to ask us questions now or throughout the meeting. So I'm going to go to reports, and we'll start with Superintendent.
Well, good evening, everyone. We're having a little bit more to report tonight. First of all, I just do want to let you know that we are still very active in serving lunches to our students. We are averaging about 90 to 95 lunches every day over the course of the week. And I want to thank Colleen Wallace and our CAF staff for doing an excellent job in preparing and arranging for the distribution of the lunches. We've received some very generous donations to the food service program. The Westford Domino's store has donated 110 gift certificates, each one for free cheese pizza, and those have been put in to the bags of students. A generous resident, and most of them are anonymous. They would want to remain anonymous. Donated $250 to Paul's Diner with the stipulation that the money was to be used to make sandwiches to donate to the lunch program. They're all pre-made and packaged in an appropriate sanitary manner, of course. And so we appreciate that. Another generous resident donated $20 gift certificates to Paul's Diner, also to be included with those sandwiches. And a generous family, and I'd love to be able to announce it because I want to congratulate them, but they don't want to be known, who 3 weeks ago donated 35 $25 Market Basket gift cards. Again, donated 35 $20 Target gift cards. So some amazingly benevolent people, and we greatly, greatly appreciate it. This is the best of humanity coming out. You'll hear a lot of controversy around the shelter, not the shelter, but stay-at-home mandates and whatnot. But there are a lot of people making a lot of wonderful things happen. Andrea Mahir, our K through 12 Fine and Performing Arts Coordinator, has mentioned that, well, for about the last 15 years, Westford has once again been named as one of the best communities in the country for music education, for its passion, its achievement, and its efforts to promote music education. There are only 754 school districts throughout the nation that receive this designation, and Westford historically has been one of the school systems who has been identified. So congratulations to our staff, to Andrea, and to our students, and to our families who spend an extraordinary amount of time in music lessons and preparing students. And so congratulations again. This week, May 4th through the 8th, is Teacher Appreciation Week. This evening, I'm sending out under my signature and Kerry's a message to all of our teachers, thanking them for the outstanding job that they do every year, but particularly this year under very, very difficult and unknown circumstances that they could not have prepared for previously, but have done an outstanding job. May 6th is also National Nurses Day, and so I'll be sending out something also to the nurses, congratulating them. Now, I know we have something on the COVID update. I did send out to the parents in the community and to the staff an update last week. I'll send one out each week. And particularly as we receive more information from the commissioner's office. The commissioner, as you may know, has sort of changed the orientation from the original guidance that was provided back in March of taking what has been taught to this point in time and going into greater depth. That has changed, and the commissioner has now provided guidance to school systems that we have to continue with content, has provided some sample priority, or what he calls power standards, to focus on. Those are curriculum standards that are deemed to be a little bit more important in terms of content, in terms of critical thinking development, etc. And so those have all been forwarded to our principals. We do have a schedule for the staff and the students to be returning to the buildings on a controlled basis to get their possessions, whatever belongings they have that they want to retrieve from the school. The staff will be allowed in over the next week and a half or so, and we will honor the governor's stay-at-home guidance through May 18th, and after May 18th have the students in a very controlled methodology come into the building to be able to retrieve things from their lockers. And so we're looking forward to them to be able to get into buildings. We will not have any aggregation of adults or students in the buildings. Everything will be metered so that we maintain distance, social distancing standards, and everyone is as safe as possible with masks and hopefully gloves. And with that, glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Committee, any questions for the superintendent?
Yep. Just a quick question, Bill. I had a comment from it's not a question. I had a comment from a parent earlier tonight that the PDF that is on the web page, your letter, the PDF that is on the web page, the links to the surveys for each of the grade levels are not functioning. Your email links were functioning, but the PDF links were not functioning.
All right. Thank you for letting me know that.
Thank you.
Committee, anything else? I see Megan's hand.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Thank you for that update, and I appreciate the weekly updates that you said you'll be sending out, Bill, as things kind of progress and change so rapidly. I'm wondering when we can potentially expect to hear the feedback that we gather from those surveys and how that will help inform alongside the commissioner's recommendations. What evolution of this remote learning do you expect to see and how that might change?
I think Kerry is going to give you probably a 1,000-foot perspective tonight. We're still taking a look at all the surveys, and that will go into greater depth as we go through the next couple of weeks. But if you don't mind, I'll save that for Kerry's update.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Committee, anything else? And then we'll turn it over to Carrie. All right, Carrie, you're on.
All right, I just have a couple of brief items. I want to reiterate the big thanks to our teachers during this National Teacher Appreciation Week. And as we know, they're working tirelessly, juggling many balls in the air at once and trying to do so, or doing so, with smiles on their faces. So I encourage any students or families to reach out to teachers, and maybe even just one teacher, and share what type of positive impacts they've had on the students. I know teachers always appreciate positive feedback and input, and I just want the staff to know that central office and the administrative team is very proud of everything that they're doing, and we always are each day, but they're really shining a little extra bright during these very unfortunate times. So thank you to the teachers. I just want to recognize Tracy Marr and Megan Walsh, who are third grade teachers at the Crisafulli School. They had written a grant to the Westford Education Foundation that was generously approved. And this grant will cover the cost of children's author Sarah Giles to come in later this month. She'll be coming, I believe there are 2 Google Meets with each of the 6 third grade Crisafulli classes. and she will be running the writing workshop, live instruction with the students. She'll be providing 2 personalized instructional videos and materials for these classes. So we look forward to having her inspire and help our writers become even more creative and create amazing writing pieces. Starting, I believe, Thursday night is the first of the 3 live kindergarten information evenings. Typically, obviously, this is held face-to-face. Instead, the principals will be hosting these virtually and look forward to shifting to this online model where they will be live interacting with parents and able to answer questions. So we do look forward to kind of testing those waters for the first time, and we hope that parents participate and are willing to come with questions and look forward to hearing about their child's kindergarten experience coming up. We do have a lot of these types of things that are typically end of the year wrap up, whether it be wrapping up this year or preparing for next year. And we are going to continue working with principals to sort of sort out how that's going to look, and we'll continue to communicate that with the committee and the larger parent body. One of the more recent conversations was about move up day for students, and how typically in the springtime we have them transition into the next year's classroom, or if they're shifting schools into the next year's schools. And we certainly want to, within the context of the situation, provide students with the opportunity to have a smooth transition now more than ever, because this year ended in a very sort of clunky and almost broken way in terms of the typical routines for the day-to-day schooling. That's all I have.
And I think the question about the survey that Megan had asked, are you?
So that'll be part of the COVID update.
Okay. And so I do have one question from the audience, and I don't know whether it's for you or COVID or year end. What do we anticipate finals looking like at WA?
We will not have typical final exams right now. The goal is just to keep the learning going. So that the finals wouldn't fit into this particular model. So because it's a credit, no credit type of system, we are not going to have final exams.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Carrie from the committee? Okay. I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Avery.
Oh, who's raising their hand? Yep.
Yeah, I had a question.
Oh, there you are.
I know this issue came up at our last meeting, and I see there's a question in the queue about it. I know that every year that we set our budget, and then particularly at Westford Academy, depending on what course selection students make, there can be some adjustments that are made between the FTEs at the various departments at the high school. And I believe that came up last week, and I just wanted to check in and report to the public that it has been reported to us that yes, there was a reduction in 0.4 in the social studies department, an increase of 0.2 in the theater arts department, and an increase of 0.2 in the physical education and wellness department. And all of those adjustments were made based upon course selections and class sizes. I know I had sent an inquiry, and I know it was sent today, and there's a lot of things happening. So I don't know if we have that class size information yet, or if we'd have that at our next meeting.
Gloria, we'll certainly have that at the next meeting. We'll send it out in advance of the next meeting. I was just looking at some numbers that I received about 2 hours ago from Andrea Mahir on the theater arts, and the numbers are up quite a bit in terms of the course registrations over last year. And I'll be glad to provide the data in all of those areas for you, certainly in advance of the next school committee meeting.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill.
And Bill, the question that is online also asks about the enrollment in Spanish 4 at WA. Could you also include that in our excuse me, in our data. It sounds like those classes could be up as high as 30.
All right, I'll make that note, certainly. If there are any others, if you could please email me so we make sure we get all of them that you are interested in.
Okay. And interesting question, which I guess now is, I mean, we could do it now or during COVID. How does Westford compare to others in terms of robustness in our remote learning?
Well, I know Kerry will answer that, but I think in talking with some colleagues, I think we're doing quite well in terms of the robustness. Now, it will never, please know, it will never be enough for some, you know, and we have been receiving emails, but the teachers have been putting in a tremendous amount of work and some very innovative work. And Kerry, I'll turn it over to you on that.
Well, from once the closure extended beyond April 7th, Westford was fairly unique in that we continued learning and moving forward in the curriculum, whereas many other districts shifted to more remote learning from the choice boards where everything was optional. In their remote learning, they were not moving forward in the new standards. They were reviewing the content that had currently been taught. So in that sense, I would say we're on the more robust side of things. Because the closure has since extended through the end of the school year, the new guidance from the commissioner is that the state does start implementing, as Bill mentioned earlier, new standards and prioritize what those standards are. But we've been doing that since phase 2 of this sort of 3-phase school closure.
Thank you. Very good. Any other questions for Bill and Carrie before we move to school committee updates? Okay. Anybody have any subcommittee liaison updates? I don't know if many of us are meeting in our subcommittees. I know Megan did. Go ahead, Megan.
So I just wanted to let the public know and everybody here know that Capital Planning Committee met this morning remotely and had a great update in light of town meeting being pushed off. And there are a lot of scenarios going forward. At the moment, town meeting is pushed to the end of June. If that is not possible and we move to something much later in the summer and looking ahead to fall town meeting, there were several items that will be pushed off. And I would say just most notably for the schools, there are many that can and need to wait for town meeting to approve. But Mike Wells, our IT director, had requested that a portion of the funds that are allocated to purchasing computers and technology equipment be moved and approved by the select board now to be spent so that we can acquire the needed machines for the one-to-world incoming freshman class, those 8th graders that will become freshmen in 2020. So that was really the only thing I think of note to report. Everything is obviously being looked at very carefully, and nothing has changed in terms of the recommendations from the Capital Planning Committee about what to fund for the schools, just the timing of when those will happen.
Thank you.
I have to say, it's been an excellent committee, and I think, Megan, I think you and Ingrid would agree, it's just really been a very, very fine committee to work on.
Absolutely. I mean, Mark Cost always jokes at the beginning that it's the best committee in town, but it really was a pleasure to see everybody's face this morning, and I feel like it gives such a well-rounded picture of West. It was a good feeling to know that everybody really is doing their part to keep things happening responsibly, fiscally responsibly, but also keep things moving. And so it was a good meeting.
And thank you both thank you, Megan, for being our connection to that, our liaison. Students, do you have anything to share with us? You just learned that there are no finals. I'm sure you have things to say.
Based off of what we talked about last week, I believe everything is going great. Teachers are starting to become more accustomed to the long-term distance learning, I think, and students are as well. We're getting a lot more like online like lecture videos, so we can like pause it and take notes and stuff, which is nice. So they record themselves, and they're becoming more understanding if like we need more time because we have a lot more work in other classes as well as studying for APs. So I think it's a new switch for everybody, but everyone's getting used to it slowly, and it's going well.
Yeah, and I
That's
also just wanted to say that I think last time we might have come off as a little bit negative. So we just wanted to point out that we do appreciate everything our teachers have been doing because it's been a challenge for them too. And we know that. And a lot of my teachers have been posting like little articles or pick-me-ups that really help us like cheer us up during the day. So we appreciate that too.
Very good. Any, I think one of the things you guys mentioned last time was that due dates were sort of all over the place and it was hard to sort of keep up with. Has that leveled out any, or is it just everybody sort of gotten accustomed to having dates all over?
I think it really depends on your teacher and the class that you're taking. Personally, I know we did talk to a couple of like my personal teachers and they were quite understanding and they like move things around and stuff. But I think it really depends on the class and the student because there's just so many teachers in school. So it's hard to like say something that's generalized towards all of them, but I think all the teachers are trying their best and it's going really well so far.
Great.
Great to hear.
Any questions for the students on their perspective of remote learning? Okay. Thank you, students. I'm going to move right over to finance and see if Ingrid has any updates for us that aren't already captured in other areas. Ingrid?
Sure. First, I did want to add one additional shout out. Friday was National Lunch Hero Day. So I think Bill already talked about how great our food service workers have been really helping out the families in Westford, and I just didn't want them to be forgotten. Piggybacking on what Megan just reported, the Capital Planning Committee did ask that school committee approve this or endorse this transfer request. What's going to happen is that we, as the school department, are requesting a transfer of $102,000 from another town account that has some surplus in order to fund the freshman Chromebooks. And then the Chromebooks will total $98,280. And we do have a balance right now of almost $31,000 of capital from last year. So we would apply that and are requesting $70,000 for the freshman Chromebooks and then $32,000 for some work that needs to happen at the foreign language lab at Westford Academy.
Okay.
Thank you, Ingrid. I forgot about that small piece, which is not so small, but if nobody, well, even if you do have questions, I'm happy to make the motion and then have questions, but I move that we as a school committee approve the transfer of, was it 70,000 even, Ingrid, or was it a specific number? I can't remember.
Well, it's 102,000 completely. So it's 70,000 for the Chromebooks and 32,000 for the foreign language lab.
And the 32,000 was coming from what was left over in capital, correct?
Well, no. So it's 98,280 for the 420 Chromebooks. So if you take the almost 31,000 from the previous capital appropriation and subtract that, then we're requesting an additional 70 for the Chromebooks. And then on top of that, it was identified that the foreign language lab at Westford Academy is in dire need, and that needs to happen before we would potentially have a town meeting. And as Megan already reported, even a town meeting at June is looking less and less likely. So,
right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. So I move that we approve the transfer of the amount that Ingrid just stated.
$102,000.
$102,000.
Just to help me understand, what are we transferring and where are we transferring the money to or from? Because I'm a little bit confused.
Ingrid, so can you explain, what was going to happen now if we don't have a town meeting?
Right. So we've been working, we've had a number of meetings with Dan O'Donnell's been running them, just various departments that have had capital needs. And we've gone through the list over and over again and seeing what we can push out to what date. Some of the stuff we're even saying, okay, well, maybe it's next annual town meeting. But there's certain things that we've identified, both, on the school department side and then other town departments that really are critical and that have to be ordered or bought really in May or early June. So these purchases, since we can't have a town meeting yet, there's some excess funds in various other departments, specifically in health insurance. There was some savings. So some of that excess money is being allocated for this purchase and some of the other capital items that need to happen now.
All right, so to help me understand is that the town has some excess money which can approve to the transfer to the school department right now without town meeting.
Yes, because it's the last 2 months of the year. So you're allowed to do those interdepartment transfers with the approval of the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, and then by doing that, we don't need that money from the capital appropriation anymore. That money will go away.
Right, that would be down. And it all kind of ends up the same, because if there was extra money at the end of the year, it would be closed out. And that closeout money is what we use for capital.
Okay. All right. Now I understand, because I'm trying to understand where the money is coming from, where the money is going.
No, we don't have a money tree. And
So Ingrid, without a town meeting, I think it's important for people to understand that we don't get a budget for next year approved. And so we are working on current year budget divided by 12 each month that we move past June 30th without a town meeting. We're just sort of using existing. And so this is a way to make sure that critical things are paid for until we can get to a town meeting.
That's perfect explanation.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And just to add on to what Avery just said, that's not a decision that Westford made. That's not a decision that our select board made. That came from the state.
Right.
We could go by a 1/12 budget as we go through this. Every city and town is dealing with it this way.
And there are other ways. There are, different ways to hold town meetings. So, I think as we get closer in June, our boards and town manager will, make the appropriate recommendations.
Thank you. So before we go on to the COVID updates, just another reminder to mute if you're not talking. There was a bit of, I guess it was hard for some of the attendees to hear. There was some breaking up, and I know we're all stretching our Wi-Is as best we can. COVID, we're going to start with a curriculum update. Oh, we need to move. Never mind. We need a second.
Yeah. Second. I was trying to say Megan made a motion, and then when I was
Megan made a motion, right?
Yeah.
But then Chris, because I think it was me. But go ahead. Sorry.
Do we have we had a second? So all in favor? I need to do a roll call. Ming Chen.
Aye.
Gloria.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Megan.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Aye. So we have unanimous vote. Thank you. Capital
you.
planning. Okay, so now I'll turn it over to Carrie and Bill for a curriculum update.
Carrie, if you want to start.
Sure. As you may know, Bill had sent out surveys to parents last Friday, and then to staff, a similar type of survey to staff earlier in the week. So this was an opportunity for us to understand how we're doing, to hear the feedback from the many different situations in terms of family situations or staff and teaching situations. So we have been moving forward at what feels like lightning speed, and it's time to stop, take a breath, and really self-reflect and evaluate. So that was the intent of our surveys. And I will say overall, we are very pleased and found the surveys to be rather validating, although we also know that there's no situation where we're going to please everybody. That's, you know, in most cases, but even more so in this case with the remote learning, because there are some households where there may be a parent who is at home and available to help facilitate a child or the children. And in other cases, there are two working parents and their goal for the day is to keep their child safe and have somebody watching over them. So there are certainly extremes, and people at home did not necessarily come from a situation where they could sign up or would have signed up for online learning because their home isn't set up that way right now. And the flip side, there are educators and staff members who wouldn't have applied for a job if it were to be trying to get things done at home with their families in this current condition. So we are all just trying to adapt, and we know that there's not going to be an ideal plan for everybody. So the staff surveys, and I'm not going to do a deep dive today. We still have a lot more processing and digging into the data to do. But we were fortunate to have 141 elementary teachers respond. This just went to Unit A staff, as well as 166 secondary educators respond. And some of the kind of balcony level takeaways were 92% of the staff feel as though the current plan is sufficient for our goals, which is essentially keeping students connected and continuing student learning. We did ask for those who felt as though if the plan was not sufficient to explain a little bit more and tell us why. And the vast majority of those comments from the percentage of people who did not feel as though this is a sufficient plan really expressed their concern over the fact that we are not providing the same opportunity that we would be able to if we were face-to-face, and that these students need, you know, real interaction throughout the day consistently. And we all believe that too, and we know that too. So I did try to lead some of those questions with things like, given the current state, or considering the situation that we're in, just to help frame it, because what we certainly can't do is change things and go back to school right now, although that would be ideal for all of us. So a lot of comments on, we just wish we were back with kids. We were happy to see that 93.5% of students are participating, and that is at varying degrees. The majority are participating, you know, fully. And those who are participating less or not participating at all, that is, we're in touch with those families and with those students. And there are some situations where it's just hard for students to become motivated when they're not in front of the teachers. But in a lot of cases, particularly at the elementary level, it's that the parents are in a situation where they can't do that for their child, and it does take parent oversight in order to complete everything that we're asking them to complete. So we'll continue to be flexible and to work with those families. 75% of staff in general feel like there should be no changes to the current plan. Those who felt as though that there should be changes, the main common themes were the issue with accountability, because it's time consuming when students don't necessarily submit something by the due date, to follow up, to sometimes reach out to parents depending on the grade level, and to try to do that, whereas typically it's much more conducive to following up with students when the student shows up to your classroom at 8:30 in the morning each day. So that is one of the, I think, obstacles. And then the other, for the 25% of staff, another theme of staff who feel as though there should be changes, another theme is that they just are looking for more live scheduled sessions with families. So in terms of the parent surveys, we asked similar questions, tweaked a bit, and some of the major takeaways, actually first I'll give you the participation rate. We had 593 elementary respondents and 610 secondary level respondents. So the takeaways were, there were 70% of the parents feel as though the current plan is sufficient for keeping students connected to school and keeping their learning moving forward. So we were very, very pleased with that. It was interesting because it was split right down the middle. 50% of the parents feel as though there should be no changes to the current plan. And so that was interesting that it didn't lean one way or another. In some of the common themes, because when it says, for those who feel as though there should be a change, there was a follow-up question to say, well, what do you suggest? And it was, many of the parents felt as though they wanted more real live time with teachers, scheduled face-to-face, required sessions where students show up. And there was also threaded throughout some of those comments was the impression, I think, that some people have that teachers are working 4 hours a week because they're expected live, whether it be office hours or meeting time, is for 4 hours. But I just want to clarify that teachers are working well beyond that. They're working at least what they would be working during the school day if things were back to normal and we were in session. We also had parents in that 50% who would like to see change ask for more quality feedback for students, and that the students aren't necessarily taking what the teachers say and then making adjustments to improve things. There were concerns about the credit versus no credit, and I know that that is something that was hard to wrap your mind around when we introduced this, and there are some people who still feel as though that's a concern. And then pretty much beyond that, the rest were the camp who felt as though there's way too much work and their students are overwhelmed, versus the other side who felt as though there's too little, we need more, this is not enough. And that was fairly equal. Once you dive in further, the amount of people who feel as though this is too much is very similar to the amount of people who feel as though this is too little. And again, that goes to the different situations that our students are in. I just want to point out, when we mentioned the credit versus no credit, the guidance department has been assured by countless colleges that they'll review each transcript within the context of the student's own school environment. And the language that I'm going to read to you in just a moment will be included on every child's transcript, as well as the school profile, in order to provide college admissions offices with the context. So on the transcripts, you'll see, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the second semester of the 1920 school year was based on a credit, no credit grading system to ensure equity for all students. Westford Academy utilized a remote learning system that required students to engage in weekly learning and assignments for each of their courses. Students who met or exceeded these requirements were given credit for successful completion of the course. The second semester of the academic year is not calculated into the grade point average. So that's just an explanation. We are not going to be alone with the transcripts that are going to colleges. This is certainly throughout the state and even broader throughout the country. So we've just started conversations because we're still, I think the parent survey will still get some additional feedback for those who have not taken it yet. But at this point, I think our position and my recommendation to the superintendent and ultimately to the committee will be to stay the course. We are going to make some tweaks or adjustments in terms of our approach, but for the plan as a whole, I do think that we should continue doing what we're doing. We're going to, though, provide more training for teachers on advanced aspects of making videos of themselves and Google Classroom. And that is really cool because when we first started this, much of the staff, particularly at the younger grades who aren't using Google Classroom, were screaming for training around Google beginner level. And now they've had a lot of practice in a very short period of time. And so the feedback from the staff survey is, okay, we're ready now. We've got this beginner part up and running, and now we want things that are a little more advanced. So we're happy to see that level of growth too. We are going to self-assess the quality of the FaceTime that we currently have with students, and that is flexible, and I highly recommend that we continue to keep it flexible for teachers, but just to make sure that we're making it of the highest quality that we possibly can, and opportunities for students where it's a useful time for them. And we've heard a lot more positive feedback. It highly outweighs some of the criticism that we're receiving around that. But for those who feel as though that adjustment, they'd like to see that adjustment made of more live FaceTime, we definitely want to make sure that we optimize the FaceTime that we currently have. And that the live sessions was something for those who felt as though there should be tweaks that was consistent for the parent side of things as well as for the staff side of things. So that certainly was a common theme. And but the majority on both sides said, you know, really don't change a thing, or at least half on the parent side and the majority on the staff side. So I just want to continue to remind people, there's a viral Facebook post that mentions the quote, "We're all riding out the same storm, but we're definitely not all in the same boat." And so at this time, I think that making a tweak from now until the end of the year, like mandating certain times, moving from asynchronous teaching to synchronous teaching, I think that most of our teachers, or even many of our teachers, are not equipped to do that. And then on the flip side, if they are, there are many families who just are not in the position to be able to do that. We are going to begin at the elementary level to implement some more targeted interventions or options. It will be optional for struggling readers and our struggling mathematicians. And we look forward to having MIs and RIs shift a little bit from supporting teachers and adding some additional lesson suggestions to reaching out to some of our tier 3 students, because right now we've got the sort of general ed population for the tier 1, and we have the special education population being addressed. And then now we're going to use our resources to begin to reach out without packing on additional work, certainly for our tier 3 math and ELA students. I think that is all. There were some comments from the parents section that absolutely are concerning, and they don't mesh with the plan that we have in place. They are one-offs. They were not themes by any means, but we just, and we can't track them because it's anonymous. So we just want to reiterate to parents that if there's any time where something doesn't feel right, or you're feeling like it doesn't mesh with what the district is saying that we're doing, to please be sure to reach out to the teacher. And if there's any sort of roadblock there, to follow up with the principal as well. I wished I had emails attached to some of the comments to say, hey, you know, let's work this out. This isn't necessarily part of our plan. So communication is always best, and we're open to it.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Carrie? I'm glad that the surveys, people engaged in them. And is it, you think you said it's okay for parents to continue to fill out the surveys? We shouldn't just stop because you've made an initial report on it. You're still willing to hear from parents in those links that will be on the website. If they have lost the email, the connections will be corrected, I think, for tomorrow, and they can access them there.
Yes.
Okay. I see Ming Chen's hand up, and we'll go Ming Chen first, then I see Megan's hand.
All right, thanks, Carrie, for the update, and then thanks for the survey. I heard a lot of complaints from parents, basically around 2 areas. One is engagement level. When you say like the engagement is like 92%, I don't know how the engagement level is being defined, because there are certainly engagement just to get it over with versus actively engage in learning. That's a major concern for a lot of parents, especially for example, some of the kids just copy other people's answer to get it over with instead of like spending time at all. That happened. And then the other thing really about engagement is the emotional connection and engagement. A lot of parents now, because of the state DSE, actually submit new guidelines, which actually says morning session, attendance, or live lessons. That's one of the way to, it's not only about academics, but also about social connection, because the engagement for the office hours is really, really abysmal. So I have to be honest with you. It's like I disagree with some of your assessment, because the office hour after like a couple of weeks or after the first week, then a lot of the kids, they don't even show up for the office hour anymore because they find it's not useful. So that's a lot of story I heard from parents or even from kids. So that's one thing, the engagement level. I do think we need to find ways to increase the engagement, and then we shouldn't just dismiss the live session or other ways to improve the engagement. The other issue which a lot of complaints come from is the inconsistency. So inconsistency between different teachers, inconsistency between different grade levels, inconsistency between different schools. So there is no uniform consistency. So for 2 students in the same grade assigned to different teachers, they may be doing very, very different. The engagement level is really, really very different. Really, the gap is much bigger than if they're in the building. So even in the building, different teachers, they would have some gaps, but it's not as big as like in the remote setup. So I do want the superintendent and Carrie to actually take this into consideration, because from March to September, if they go back to school, that's 6 months without significant learning. That's a long time. So I know that some parents now they're paying for private tutors online because they are worried, they're concerned. What I'm really, really worried about is that after we get off this, the gaps between students will be even larger than what normally would be. And then that's just a disservice to a lot of kids who cannot afford private tutors or who do not choose to involve private tutors. So I do think as a public school, we have an obligation to make sure that we are consistent to provide quality content. Even with the DSE guideline, it says we need to provide critical content to be successful for next grade level, right? It doesn't have to provide everything we used to provide, but at least something critical enough.
Yeah, and much of our conversation moving forward between now and next year is going to be exactly that. Assessing students where they are, because yes, there are students who are more actively involved in academics right now and in any model than others, depending on their situation. So I agree with you. And we've just, as a public school, our obligation is to make sure that we have a plan that works for absolutely everybody. And we've got the majority of people saying the plan is sufficient, and not everybody, and I understand where you're coming from. I do think that that live, and you're right, social emotional is a priority, even more so than academics anytime, but especially in a situation like this. And that face-to-face time is something that may be the one thing keeping that alive with students, that connection to school, more than just getting the work done. So that's where I think we are going to work with teachers just to have them assess what's working, what's not. I really feel as though, and based on the data, it does support the fact that all of those people who weren't asked to, that there wasn't a subsequent question to say, why is it going well? We just said, tell us why it's not going well if they chose that. But toward the end, we left it open for everybody. And there were many people thanking us for the level of flexibility. And I think the more we start taking that away, the more of a burden it is onto many families. But I think that if we, again, as I mentioned earlier, optimize the use of the 4 hours for now. For example, at the elementary level, we were talking about how nice it would be to have a morning meeting, and let that be part of the 4 hours so that the whole class is together. And I do think that that's wonderful for the students to see their peers, but try managing that remotely from being, one tile on the screen and having your 22 students. So while I think that that's a great opportunity, we've since learned, it seems like small group would be a better use of that time and pulling small groups together. So we are continuing to shift in that direction, and we're going to be more explicit in asking teachers to talk about that, asking coordinators and principals to work with their teachers and talk about what makes the most sense. One of the concerns is that engagement thing, because again, if students show up and the teacher is standing in front of them, then they're much more likely to pay attention and get their work done than if they have to initiate logging on and initiate doing the work when nobody's standing over them. And that's really where we are asking parents as much as possible that that the motivation that they need, we all want it to be intrinsic, but they're children. And so sometimes they need some external support for motivating themselves. And that has been in some ways taken off of us and put on to those people who are at home with students. So now more than ever, we're looking for partnerships with families to help us structure the student's day so that they are initiating that. But I hear what you're saying, and everything that you mentioned, Wing Jen, was mentioned somewhere and potentially multiple times in the survey. So we're going to continue to evaluate that. For the teaching, we've got to teach the standards, and now we have to teach the standards in this way where we have less time with students. So we're prioritizing that, and we will be fully ready to, with open arms, embrace these students who are now going to be more, the spread is going to be larger as they walk in. And we're just doing the very best that we can do, keeping in mind what makes the most sense for everybody.
May I just say also that I actually think, and I agree, Ming Chen, with what you said in terms of consistency. Consistency, that's what we've been hearing through emails from some parents in terms of FaceTime, in terms of content. But I think for 6 weeks in, quite honestly, given the fact that children have had to adapt, given their various learning styles, and that staff members who have, been in a routine of the who, what, when, where, and why of instruction for many years have now been completely disrupted. I actually think we're in pretty good shape, although there is a lot of room for improvement in terms of consistency and the rigor in some instances. So as Kerry said, we're very familiar. We cover that every week with the principals. Kerry covers it, I know, in her meetings with the curriculum coordinators. This is a whole new arena of educating children that we're involved with now, that we're having to adapt to and recalibrate to as quickly as possible. And we're working our heads off to try and make it happen. I did respond, I will let you know, to a parent yesterday who basically expected this to be a replication of, you know, regular classroom activities. And I had to be honest and say there is really no way that's going to happen. But we're going to work to bring about the consistency and the rigor and the connection and the FaceTime to where it needs to be across the system. So all good points. Just please know that we're very, as Carrie said, very familiar with all of them and trying to address them as quickly, but also as thoroughly as possible.
Other questions from the committee? I see Megan's hand.
Thank you. And thank you for that, Carrie and Ming Chen, I think, and Bill. I think I echo a lot of those same concerns, and I know that those are certainly foremost in our administrators' minds. So I had two more sort of directed questions after that, sharing in those concerns. So one thing with regards to Ming Chen mentioned the office hours at the middle school, and I imagine that the same model is happening at the high school, though I don't know, but I do have a middle schooler. And I think one question I have is, can we anticipate that potentially shifting to being, even if it's not necessarily group class instruction, a live group class meeting with the intention being instruction or getting together or FaceTime with the teacher? I think at the middle school, what I'm hearing, at least from my own child and certainly from peers, parents, is that the office hours were very much sold to the students as check in if you have a question about the assignment. And so if you couple that with middle schoolers' personalities as we know them, that, you know, they certainly don't want to stand out from the crowd in any way, right? It's kind of a roadblock for many. Yet I think on the other side of that, they're craving FaceTime with their teachers who are really important to them, and even seeing their peers. So I would agree with you that the attendance to office hours is dismal, because it's very few students who are willing and wanting to go into those forums and raise their hand and say, I didn't understand this math. Whereas they are really craving just that interaction that I know the elementary students are having with their teachers more than once a week. So I think as a parent, I would say that I would hope to see some sort of shift in that. And I guess I'm wondering what the expectations were as far as what was laid out coming from you, Carrie and Bill, to our administrators at those levels. And was it different from elementary would be my first question. And then my second question is, obviously consistency is so difficult, and we've talked about equity and consistency when we're in live classrooms, and this throws a wrench in that completely. So while that is the goal, I do want to acknowledge that I think everybody is doing their very, very best to do this in their own way, but in a lot of ways, because we're all in our homes, we are operating a little bit in silos. And so I think it has brought out the very best in terms of creativity from our staff. So I applaud them and appreciate that. But I wonder how often they are having an opportunity to share, let's say, across grade levels and then also across schools, because I do hear of sort of different models and different ideas, whether, like you said, Carrie, it's small group. I know of some teachers that have started doing that already because they've discovered it works better for their own classroom. Different ways to do group readings of texts or read alouds or whatever it is. So particularly at the elementary level, but also at the middle school level, because we have more than one school, are they having an opportunity to discuss as teachers what they're doing and how they're doing it and what's working really well, not only within their own cohorts, let's say, you know, all the fifth grade teachers at Crisafulli, but then are they talking to all the fifth grade teachers district wide to share those ideas?
Yes, they have weekly meetings, or in one grade level span, it's every other week opportunities where the teachers get together, and it's facilitated by the curriculum coordinator. And they do share what's working, what's not, sharing resources, asking questions. So they do have consistently have meetings, I would say more now than ever, because we don't have weekly meetings with groups of teachers during regular school time. And this is an opportunity for, it's really more of a resource for teachers in that it can have them in this kind of uncharted territory pool their resources and their thinking together. So yes, they do that. In terms of what the office hours were intended to be, it is basically as open-ended as what I think people are experiencing. And that's because we knew at the high school level, it would be very different, even from one content to another. It might be different than the elementary level. So we just really didn't want to limit. We wanted teachers to have the autonomy to be able to make those decisions for their students. But like I said, I think part of this, after we dive into this feedback, and we'll talk to the principals on Friday about it, will be revisiting how we do, because I think that that's probably the biggest kind of nugget that we've got to address, is that those live sessions, and how do we make sure that we are making those most beneficial for kids. So I do think that there will be some adjustments throughout, and what that looks like, I don't know yet. We'll continue to look at the rest of the feedback that comes in, and then we'll talk to principals and talk to the teachers and with the coordinators involved to understand how we would make those shifts. And, you know, just understanding for the people who have different models, small group, some are individual, why are you doing it and how's it working, so that we can assess what they're trying to achieve. So yes, we are going to continue to fine tune that aspect of things. I think both of you, I mean, Jen and Megan, bring up great points. And again, it was certainly highlighted in the surveys.
You know, your observations, if I may say, are why we have a weekly meeting now with the administrators. It's much more frequent than we normally have. But as Carrie said, this Friday, we begin to share the survey results, not only share them, but discuss what types of modifications we need to make going forward.
Carrie and Bill, will those surveys be made available to the school committee and to parents who are interested in seeing them? And can we break them out? I think, Carrie, you had initially said we had K-5 and 6-12. Will we break things out even more so we could see what the middle schoolers are saying or what the high schoolers are saying?
Yes, it will take some time because there's information that would have to be redacted, because people very much spoke on behalf of their child or maybe talking about a particular teacher. So that would take a little bit of time. But yes, I mean, the data.
Okay, I think Megan's having technical difficulties.
I really am. I'm having so many difficulties. Can I just add on one more thing? Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I want to make sure I get to Anshu too. I saw her hand go up.
Okay, I don't have another question. I just wanted to say that I think it's so important at the middle school level to acknowledge the shift that happens. The kids that are at K-5, you know, maybe need that connection with their teachers to motivate them to complete the work. And then the side benefit, of course, is that they get to see all their friends and show off their pets, and they love all of those things. I think when you switch to the middle school, it's really important that we acknowledge that in many cases, lots of those students do have the intrinsic motivation and sort of that expectation of, okay, this is expected of me and I can do the work. But the part that we might be missing without those live things is caring for the social emotional aspect of those students. I think that is taking a hit. So thank you.
Agree, Megan.
I agree. Anshu, I saw your hand go up. I mean, I know I see Gloria's too, but I wanted to get him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about, like, for engagement. For me personally, I have one teacher that meets she has like a scheduled meeting 1 to 3 times a week, and it's like everyone's like asked to come, but
could homerooms or advisories be for that social and emotional connection at some point? Gloria, you had a question?
It was more of a comment kind of in response to some of the questions and topics we've discussed. I wonder if office hours needs a little bit of rebranding. I mean, adults know what office hours means. College students know what office hours means. And I think maybe our high schoolers are maybe a little more in tune with how I would use office hours. But maybe it's kind of a foreign concept to our middle schoolers. So maybe we really need to kind of rebrand it a bit. And instead of say, these are office hours, so if you have a question, you can come in. Maybe that is, like Megan indicated, that's kind of a high bar and that's intimidating to our middle schoolers. Maybe it needs to be, hey, we're going to have a review session on what the most recent lesson was, or we're going to play a game to review this material. I understand we don't want to be teaching new material in a synchronous class that is going to make it difficult if not all students are able to attend. But if maybe it's rebranded in a way to make it more appealing, the students who are able to make it will try and pop in, and they may not make it for every session, but maybe they'll kind of give those office hours another try. Maybe, they tried them once or twice at the beginning and they weren't comfortable with them, but the whole situation's evolving. So I think parents and students need to understand that and need to have some patience with it and maybe give it another try. Maybe encourage your kids to go back to those office hours, and maybe there's some fun things the teachers can do during those times to kind of encourage students to pop in, even if it is more addressing the social emotional connections with each other than new learning.
I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Other questions before we hear from, well, students, if you're on the agenda again to share your perspective on this, if you have anything more to add. Nothing from Anshu. Okay, then I guess we'll jump to Courtney and the special education.
Okay. I wanted to start by once again thanking our school psychologists, Richard Jane, Julia Mazika, Melissa Warner, and Steve Kuna for developing our social emotional health and well-being website. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to direct some of the families to go ahead and check it out. It doesn't look like there have been too many hits on the website, too much traffic. So I did want people to know that they're out there. The website is being updated on a regular basis. And there are some great tips for both parents, for students, for and for teachers about how to help yourself and how to help your student. And there's a variety of different topics in there. One might not be appropriate for everybody, but I think that there'll be a couple good nuggets in there for people to peruse. So I do encourage people to continue to look at that website. And on Wednesday, I joined the CPAC officers in a Zoom meeting. The purpose of this meeting was to share up-to-date information with our families, as well as to answer some previously submitted questions and answers. And as we started, I had indicated that I'm giving them up-to-date information, but information could change. And tonight I am coming with you with one of those changes, as information constantly is evolving. And so our update is in regards to timelines and our IEP meetings that we are going to start holding. I had previously shared with the committee and with staff members that our focus really needed to remain on the instruction, on the remote learning plan. Certainly, I think at the last meeting I had told you that the Department of Ed was encouraging us and giving us the thumbs up that if we wanted to conduct virtual team meetings, that they would support that. However, at the same time, they were volleying that final decision back to the districts so that we could take a look at our own capacity, where our teachers were in regards to managing their time and wanting to put the focus into the students. And so that was heard loud and clear, as well as doing what some of our area districts were doing as well in regards to team meetings. On Friday, that message did shift a bit, as the Department of Ed was surprised with some of the federal guidance that did come down, which didn't give a lot of leeway in regards to timelines. So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education had to scratch their plans that they were going forward with in regards to a good faith effort, and basically told the districts, do what you can do to get your team meetings completed. Now with that, we have a lot of team meetings, and we will not be able to complete all of the team meetings between now and the end of the school year. Nor would I think that it would be a valuable use of all of the staff members' times, especially in light of some of the comments that I'm hearing right now with parents who are really looking for more opportunities with the remote learning. There's going to be a give and take when our staff members are now participating in meetings and developing IEPs opposed to being in front of students. So we do need to strike a balance. And with that, we will start by conducting all initial evaluations, 3-year reevaluations, privately obtained evaluations that have been submitted to us. So we're going to start with those eligibility meetings. Obviously, this does not include the handful of evaluations that were in process, but that had to come to a screaming halt when school was closed. And we are also going to look towards families to partner with us in agreeing to postpone the annual review meetings that were due in springtime until we're all together again once school resumes in the fall. And by doing so, this does not change any sort of eligibility on your child's IEP. We are in stay put mode right now in regards to these IEPs. Even with the IEPs that might be developed on the basis of the eligibility meetings that we will conduct, those IEPs can't be implemented until we're back in school. So we would still be looking at remote learning plans. The only difference would be as if one of those reevaluations or initials started a new set of services. Let's say they weren't receiving speech services previously, and now they're eligible for speech services. Then we would fold in speech services into the remote learning plan. But I certainly, in asking the families to partner with us on that, I want to reassure them that, they're not missing out by holding back and just giving us a little bit more breathing room so that we can conduct these team meetings in the fall. And so they will be receiving emails from their liaisons, from their building administrator, asking for their partnership, and hopefully that will occur. If not, we will do our best to complete the IEP meetings. However, I think we're looking at about 6 weeks left of school. So there are only so many minutes in a day that we can accomplish these, and we will certainly continue to do our best. Also, extended year services. There have been many questions around our summer school. So extended year services are offered each year. We continue the education of well over 100 students who are at substantial risk for regression over the summer. And what is important to note is that this regression is associated with their own disability in the level of services that they currently receive. It certainly isn't to make up for missed time or gaps in education. So we wouldn't be predicting that many more students will qualify for extended year services if those meetings do take place between now and the beginning of summer services. We are also very, very hopeful that our summer services will take place in the buildings, but that decision is only going to be made by the governor. And the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education did encourage each of the districts to start planning right now for both remote and regular EYS as we know it. That's a big ask on their part. So there was a little bit of a gentle pushback to the department saying, could you please let us know as soon as possible whether we're going to be allowed to welcome our students in July, or if we are going to be waiting for the fall, because there is an awful lot of preparation, and both of those models will look different. And both of the hiring processes for each one of those models will look very different, depending on if we are just all remote or if we are welcoming students back into the building. So Jane Anderson is an occupational therapist in the district. She has been leading our EYS program for years now. She does a fabulous job in all of the coordination. And at this time, she is in the process of thinking of both, what does remote look like and what would it look like if we were able to welcome our students back. So those are the updates from special education.
Questions from the committee? Alicia.
Hi. So Courtney, thank you again for meeting with the parents with us this week. I think it was helpful to sort of package all of those questions into one place so they could all be answered. Something that I am hearing from parents, and now that you've started talking about the IEP meetings being held, something I'm hearing from parents is there's a concern for the groups of parents whose students are transitioning buildings next year. And they may not be in a reevaluation phase. They may just be coming up for their 1 year, and they are concerned about what transition looks like. I know you said you're going to be asking the families to partner with you on postponing things to the fall, but if they choose not to, will there be some sort of way to give, I don't want to say preference, but a little bit more weight to the scheduling of those students who have transition coming up? Is that something you're looking into?
So that's a great question, Alicia, and I'm sorry that I didn't include that when I was initially sharing the information. When we do look at the annual reviews, we are going to be looking at it as kind of a triage model, like what are the most important. And certainly, you know, I'm hearing from the 5th grade special education teachers that they want to be able to make sure that all the plans are in place for the middle school, and et cetera, et cetera. So we have a couple different options of what can happen in that scenario. If the student's IEP has already been developed for the year, and their meeting has taken place and the IEP is out there and proposed, we are able to put together a smaller type meeting and just send home an amendment that would include what we are recommending for, let's say, middle school supports or high school supports, or what that would look like. If the meeting has not taken place yet, then those are the ones that we really want to try to get done for scheduling purposes, as well as to help parents understand what the services will look like at the next grade level. One thing remains consistent, you know, what the student's disability is, how it affects the student accessing the general education curriculum, what are the goals and objectives. Those pieces do not change. However, there is a difference between the K-2 model, 3 to 5, and middle school and high school in the way that services are delivered. And so that is an important piece, and we will certainly try our best to address each one of those.
Fantastic, thank you.
Welcome.
Other questions for Courtney, or we will move on and let Ingrid, I don't know if she has anything additional to add for us this evening. Thank you, Courtney.
You're welcome.
Nothing really new yet. You know, we're still just trying to take stock of where we are, what the end of the year is going to look like. As Courtney and Carrie have reported, you know, we receive new guidance constantly, so we're reacting. I think we're all very curious what next year will look like, and are eager to try and start planning for that. But you know, no one has the information right now, so we just have to continue to be patient and as prepared as we can be. So we're continuing to work with that. We're continuing to address some of our transportation concerns. We did receive guidance that our custodians can return full-time back to our buildings. So we're hoping to, once the schools have distributed the personal possessions of the teachers, the staff, that they've gotten their classrooms set up or broken down for the summer, and the students have retrieve the stuff from their lockers, that the custodians can start on some of the summer work. We're hoping with this little jump start, this will be maybe a benefit of this tragic situation, that we might not need as much summer help if they can get some of the work done before the end of the school year. We are continuing the technology, set up a great system for picking up and dropping off Chromebooks now here at central office, that's safe and with very limited contact, and they're working on plans just to retrieve the Chromebooks then from the seniors, and then staff at the end of the year, and winding all the loaners down.
Great, thank you. Okay, new business. We have out-of-state and overnight field trip approvals, and I believe Bob Ware will be joining us, as well as Bill. Are you gonna head this one?
Well, we generally approve those trips that are new for the upcoming school year. I know the middle school has sent over trips. As you know, it drops off exponentially from the high school to lower levels. All of those trips at the middle school are repeats. But Bob has brought forward some trips from the equestrian club that they're requesting, trips to Rhode Island, and also a trip to Greece, if I recall correctly, from the math department to study the ancient mathematical topics brought forward by Archimedes and others. So those are presented to you. The only thing I will be cautious of that I have communicated to the high school with is the trip to Greece is preliminarily booked or at least arranged through Iep Tours. Now that is the tour company that we've had some trouble with in terms of refunds. So we're gonna, I would like the high school administration to revisit that, because we want to make sure that whatever is approved, and it's up to your discretion whether or not to approve it, we want to make sure that we're dealing with a vendor who will guarantee a refund to parents if the social distancing is continued and trips are disrupted.
Can we also just sort of place a caveat on all of these for the fall, that these are all sort of on the conditions of the social distancing and pandemic situation, since we are hearing about a second wave in the fall? I'm sure many of us are concerned about approving things that we really don't know. And I also, I echo what you said, and we need to verify that we're dealing with companies that will be making refunds based on the pandemic, and not the situation that sadly we're in with one of our trips.
That's correct. Yep. And you're absolutely correct. Everything is contingent upon whether or not there are travel restrictions, whether or not there are restrictions in life in general, locally, regionally, nationally, or globally. So that is a given now.
So in some ways, this is a little bit putting the horse before the cart, not knowing where we are. This is something that we do every calendar year, is to approve and look at the field trips for the coming year.
Right. So as you said, Avery, I would suggest that if you're so disposed to approve them, that you approve them on the condition that they will be approved as long as trips can be taken based on health advisories or travel advisories also.
Right. Before we let Bob speak, do you have a question, Megan?
I do. I just had a question sort of related to that, and Bob can answer this about these particular trips, but also as trips as the whole, on the whole. In cases, I don't know if we have this. Do we have cases where the trips are contingent on a certain number of students participating to make them possible cost-wise? And if so, I would think that that's another sort of caveat. I would imagine that this will make many, many families and students think twice about whether to participate and put deposits down on trips, and could potentially impact numbers for the foreseeable future in terms of participation.
Yeah, Megan, it's a great question. It's a great point, because we've had field trips be canceled due to lack of enrollment. It all depends on what the cost is for the trip. And it's usually any type of trip that is leaving the country has to have at least eight kids plus to run successfully. So we did get trips in previous years that have been canceled due to participation. And to your point, this could largely affect how we proceed moving forward.
Yeah, mute.
Well, thank you, Bob. That answers my question.
Okay.
I think. Sorry, I didn't know if there was anything else to say. I mean, that was my suspicion, and I think that's the case. And I think we won't really know the impact of that and family comfort levels until this progresses. And as you said, Avery, if we have a second wave and what that looks like. And so there's not really a way to predict that. Of course, but I think it is with that extra caveat, if we were to approve these, that we sort of at least put that out to the public, that we understand that certainly some of these trips have the potential for cancellation because of low participation that we anticipate.
Yep.
Absolutely. Ming Chen?
Yeah, so for the EF tours, I think a lot of us, we have eighth grade kids for the DC trip got canceled. Which the Stony Brook school, we had really bad experience with the EF tours. So so I'm really like not feeling very comfortable about like ordering with them with another tour, which you don't know what's going to happen, and then when is that going to happen for that? So it's next April. Well. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know like the experience of dealing with that company, which I think Dr. Chu probably is very frustrated. And I don't know if we're going to have another like very frustrated encounter with that company.
Right, and I think Bill had already addressed that, and I think Bill, I would not be one to approve a trip that is currently going to be managed by EF. Given what we've just seen with the Stony Brook school. Bob, is there any discussion about moving that, or how, is there talk for that trip to be revisited?
Yes, I've sent an email to Jim Antonelli asking to look for another vendor to work through because of the difficulties all school systems have had with EF tours.
Are we just going to take that one off of the list then for tonight, because, or are we just going to vote not to approve it at this point? I think either way.
We can. I don't think it's. There's a problem if we were to remove it, that particular item from tonight's agenda, and revisit it in another meeting or two.
I would be in favor of that.
Mm-hmm. That's not until the summer, anyways. So we have plenty of time.
Is that summer 21?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So we're going to table the new trip to Greece at this time.
That's correct.
Gloria?
Is the Greece trip the only trip that involves EF tours, or are there recurring trips that we've done in the past that would still be slated for EF tours?
There are additional trips that have used EF tours that have been pre-approved through years past that we need to revisit in September.
Mm-hmm.
So do we need to take a motion tonight to agree basically not to do business any longer with EF, or to review our field trips that are managed by them in the past?
I would be in favor of that.
Oh, Carrie?
Yeah, I would recommend if you want to make a motion, maybe just have these trips revisited prior to, in the case that they make any changes. And I say that because we may have some families that have selected to get the vouchers for future trips instead of getting the reimbursed because the voucher amount was higher than what
Correct.
the reimbursement would be. So we just want to allow for potentially some flexibility, and ultimately the committee may desire to say no to each one of those, but it might be better to do it one at a time.
Good point.
Okay, so then I would ask that any trips booked with EF currently be brought back around to us for future approval, even if they are a recurring trip. Just so we can double check on that one, since that was a trouble spot.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready? Does anybody have any other questions about the trips? Bob, do you have any other information to share?
No, that's the only new one that I anticipated a lot of challenges and questions with this because of what we've been dealing with. And we did a lot of work in the spring, canceling trips and looking into reimbursements and insurance purposes. So yeah, this is an ongoing conversation. It needs to be revisited as long as we're in this current situation.
Other questions? And it looks like I have, hold on, I was just trying to, yeah, why don't we, Chris? So I had questions about middle school, and I don't think Bob is the one to answer middle school questions.
Are we going to vote them separately or vote them all together?
Let's vote them separately because I think they're different beasts. So do we have, so we're looking to vote on the WA trips.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have a motion to approve minus the summer 21 trip to Greece, the new one?
So moved.
Do I have any? Ming Chen, did you second?
Yeah.
Okay. So we need a roll call, understanding that any EF tours would come back to us just for a second look. Ming Chen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have unanimous. Bob, you can continue on with field trips.
Okay, thank you.
And then I see Dr. Chu has joined us. Thank you. Do people have questions about the middle school trips and overnights? I had one question on the Blanchard list. It was very hard to read the printout. Is the 8th grade going to DC and Canopy, or is that a typo that it should be the 7th grade going to Canopy with the Stony Brook group?
Chris, are you there? Or Tim?
Well, Chris, you're
Yeah,
muted,
I'm
I
mute.
think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm mute.
There we go.
Hey.
Hi. I'm fairly confident that they've been sending their 7th graders to Canopy still.
Okay.
And that, so I believe that's what I know that that's what they've been doing the last couple of years. And Tim didn't mention any change to that. So
yeah, I'm wondering if it's just a typo on the chart.
Actually, wait, I take that back. I think they did shift to sending the 8th graders to Canopy.
Okay.
So my question is that the 8th grade come back from DC on May 28th, and then immediately they're going to Canopy.
Yeah, because I actually remember now the PTO did a whole breakfast for the 8th graders before they went to Canopy at Blanchard. So that's Stony Brook sends the 7th graders to Canopy, and Blanchard shifted to send the 8th graders. Or actually, I think what happened historically, honestly, is I think Stony Brook shifted to have the 7th graders go instead of the 8th graders to give the 7th graders a trip that they didn't have. So I don't believe that they've made any changes there. So I think it should be for both 8th grade.
I see Patty's joined us. Is that?
Oh, there you go.
Hi, Patty.
Hi. Our 8th grade trip is to Canopy. They go to DC, and then the last week of June, they go to Canopy. Our 7th graders go to Bodeborg.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Any other questions on the middle school field trips and overnights? Okay. I need a motion then to approve those, I believe.
Avery, before we vote on those, is this on the presumption that we would be using a different tour company for next year?
Dr. Chu?
So yes, we were not thinking about using EF again. EF, this is the first year we ever used EF. We had actually changed from using Capital Tours because we had had some negative experiences with Capital Tours. So we explored a different option just for this year. And yes, it has been miserable. I will say before the pandemic, they did an excellent job organizing everything, and the things that they were going to have our students do, we were very happy with, because we were getting better access to things than we had in the past, which is one of the reasons why we had stopped using Capital. But we are already looking at other options for the future. So that was just a one-off, and I don't see it repeating. No.
Thank you for that question and answer. Other questions or comments for Dr. Chu or Patty? Okay, so I need a motion to approve the middle school trips.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, Ming Chen.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Megan.
Aye.
Gloria.
Aye.
Aye. So we have unanimous approval of all those school trips without using EF. Thank you very much. I think we're going to keep everybody on the line and go to middle school and high school handbooks.
Okay, I can first if you'd like.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, we have two very simple requests or proposals, but I also want to just bring to the attention to the committee that we did a lot of work this year with our guidance counselors, our school adjustment counselors, our special ed chairperson, our school social workers on the attendance. Chronic absenteeism was a major focal point for our team this year. And, you know, and we had to realize that the more kids are missing school, the more challenges they're facing. So we cleaned up our handbook, kind of made it more user-friendly, more clear for our parents, more clear for our students, and did a lot of work there. And tracking almost 1,800 kids is not easy. And we are just going to make a lot of measures next year to get data earlier, make contacts earlier, make communication more frequent, and do our best to keep kids coming to school as much as possible. So that's really the first part of the information packet that I gave you. We do have two requests that we're just looking to move forward. Is the no credit. It's years past, or what we've done before is any student that has 7 absences gets no credit for that quarter. 7 unexcused absences. Grade on the report card would stay as such, but it would just be a small comment on the report card that said no credit issued. Wasn't clearly identified. Speaking to a lot of DCL schools, a lot of schools are going with no credit. The grade goes into the report card being NC, which is, it kind of has more teeth for the students. They understand that, they see that. Once credit is received through a credit recovery program with the teacher, the guidance counselor, and the dean, the grade that was issued will go back onto the report card / transcript. But we felt the NC would keep the kids alive as far as their attendance and hold them more accountable on that. I don't know if you have any questions on that proposal at the time.
I see a hand from Megan.
I just had a quick question, Bob, on it says page 11. I'm not sure what page of the actual PDF of the updates it is, but with regards to the rules regarding attendance, number 6, it says absences due to suspension may count, and may is underlined, but then it doesn't really go on to explain what would go into the decision of whether or not it counts. Can you talk about that?
That was a situation before if a student was suspended for anywhere from 5 to 10 days, that then they would be ineligible to participate after the suspension into MIA sports, co-curricular activities. And sometimes this was almost a double punishment for kids where if they had an incident where they were suspended and now all of a sudden they're ineligible for a spring sport. So the May gives us some flexibility to determine if the student made that one-time poor decision and they've been able to stay on task with us, that they may be able to be eligible to participate in activities outside of education.
Okay, but it would, so even if they were allowed to participate in the activities, the absences would still count towards the accrual of not getting credit for the quarter?
Yeah, they'd have to earn back credit through the credit recovery program, but not take away any type of participation outside of school.
So I guess that the explanation that you're giving makes sense, but that I feel goes well beyond the 2 sentences that are there in terms of a student reading and understanding that. So maybe we just add to that to clarify in writing.
Okay.
More of what you said, because I feel like it, that makes sense. But if somebody reads that, they're not going to know that answer unless they ask, as I, asked you. And so I would hope that we could have a little more clarity in writing for parents and students reading that, if that were to happen.
I could add language to that, Megan.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Other questions for Dean Ware on handbooks?
I was just looking, is there an explanation about the credit recovery in the handbook?
It's a short one, Chris. It just says the credit recovery process there is a language in there. I don't have it in front of me, but it will be worked with through the student's dean, counselor, and the teacher.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And don't forget, you can ask questions of middle school as well. Policy committee, I just wanted to be sure that you felt that the policies that we approved with language that was, I believe, handed down from the state, that's adequately reflected in the handbook changes. I saw a couple of them with homelessness and some of the other quantifying groups. I'm seeing yes is good.
Yeah, there's what Mayor just say. If this we're having them review the high school and middle school handbooks and the elementary by Attorney Tom Nuttall has been very helpful to us.
Right. Other questions or concerns?
I guess my only question is, as I'm cross-referencing, and this is my own fault, I did not read every single page of both handbooks, but I am reading the highlighted updates. And I'm wondering if where cross information applies, if those changes were made in both. For example, in the middle school handbook, we added gender identity to notice of non-discrimination. Is that change also reflected in the high school handbook? Without going back, I'm not positive. Does anybody know? Any of my fellow committee mates read through every page better than I read just through the updates?
I do think that's where Attorney Nuttall in the past, and I think he's done it again, has brought consistency to the language in the yearbooks, the handbooks, excuse me.
Okay.
Bob, do you know if that language got picked up in the high school version?
I believe that language was done last year.
Okay.
And additionally, Dr. Chu and in the middle school one, student suspension and exclusion, it says to add tobacco, vapor, e-cigarettes, CBD oil, and delete electronic cigarettes and vaping devices. That's just a replacement, in other words, to be more explicit about what qualifies as that.
Yes, those were just to be more specific, and that again came directly from the attorneys.
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you.
If there are no more questions, I need a motion to approve handbooks.
So moved, but I would like to see the additional language that reflects the answer that Dean Ware gave, eventually, assume it, so moved with that change, but I would like to just see ultimately what that language looks like to expand on the
explanation,
the absenteeism, the may count towards.
So it's a conditional approval once we see the further write-up.
Yes, please.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of a conditional approval? Oh, Gloria, I see a.
Also just wanted to clarify, since it was raised, I scanned quickly, and the WA handbook notice of non-discrimination does address homelessness, age, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity. So yes, it looks like it was just updated last year. So now both handbooks should be in line.
Perfect. I had a second, so I'll do roll call. Sean?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Ming Chen? I think he said aye. Alicia?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have handbooks conditionally approved. If Dean Ware or whoever can just let us see that additional terminology explaining the may exclude.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, big thanks to the handbook committees on getting those.
Yeah, that's awesome. Getting all of that checked off. So I think we are to high school graduation recommendations. Is Jim going to, hey.
Yes.
Principal Antonelli.
It doesn't have audio.
And there's Dean Toomey.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We got all sorts of people.
Good evening, Jim again.
And I'll be happy to introduce everybody. Avery, can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you for your support. I hope all of your families are well. This is certainly a difficult time. It's good to be back and to see all of your faces and to be doing some good work. So thanks for having me tonight. Tonight, we've got with us Dean of Students, our Senior Dean, Dan Toomey. We've got class advisors, John Nagorski and Wendy Croto, both are from the math department. In addition, we have our class officer, our president, Matt Washleishan. And I'd also like to thank our vice president, Shelley Singal, our secretary, Mackenzie Mead, and our treasurer, Lucy Zhao, for all the work that they've done over the last several weeks, holding meetings and having conversations and handing out signs, of course, using appropriate social distancing and techniques. But we do want to go over some of the thoughts that we have moving forward with graduation, knowing that we're under very different circumstances. This is surely something that I haven't had to deal with in my career of 26 years in Westford. But we're up to the challenge. We're up to the challenge, and we can certainly move forward. So as Mr. Toomey and I had conversations with the class advisors and the class officers, one thing was evident, is that the class of 2020 would like to hold off as long as possible to be together one last time. And that a virtual graduation was something that they were not really interested in. And so we had a great discussion last Friday. And Matt, you're welcome to weigh in at any time. Dean Toomey, your class advisors, at any time, please interrupt me, and I'll surely step aside. But the plan was to think about 2 specific dates moving forward, in hopes that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is able to release some of the opportunities for us to have a graduation perhaps on site. The first being the weekend of August 7th, 8th, or 9th. And we would do something on the athletic stadium, Trustees Field, where we would do a morning graduation of some sort. May look very, very different. It may just be graduates. You may have seen the cadets graduate, Air Force cadets, over the last couple of weeks, something with social distancing and masks and gloves and so forth. We would do it early in the morning because somewhere around 9:30, because the turf field heats up quite a bit. So again, getting folks outside of the building would be nice, getting students socially distanced. Perhaps it could have parents with us and perhaps other relatives, depending on what happens in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We give 3 dates always because of weather, inclement weather. So something certainly on August 7th, August 8th, or August 9th, we would love to pull something off for the graduates. We then went on to think about another date if we don't have clearance at that time, as in December, when students are home for, most likely home for the holiday recess. And we're looking at December 19th as an alternative date, which would most likely be indoors at Westford Academy with tickets. And again, depending upon what it would look like, it could just be graduates. It could be graduates with, you know, a Westford Cat, you know, in the building, recording, a live recording of the graduation and so forth. So very, very different. But again, our officers were very, very specific and clear that they want this one opportunity. And I want to give them this one opportunity to be together. We have a group of great students that deserve this opportunity. We have a lot of virtual plans for award ceremonies, which they are all amenable to. I want to put a plug in for the Last Night Committee. I was on a conference call last week with Cindy McKee and Arthur Benoit and the Last Night Committee, who is still out there soliciting funds to support the seniors, the class of 2021. They've already ordered blankets, and they've purchased gift items already, and how we distribute those is to be determined. I'll meet with them again next week, but they're very, very excited, and they want to continue to provide some social activity, whether it's just driving through to pick up a raffle award or some kind of award through Last Night. But there's a lot of good people out there that are working very hard, that care about the class of 2020. Class of 2020. It's devastating to us that we're in these circumstances right now. And so I want to turn it over to Dean Toomey or the class advisors, or Matt, if you'd like to chime in regards to how you feel, that would be terrific.
Thank you, Mr. Antelli. I think you hit it spot on. And I think with a lot of the stuff we talked about tonight, a big common theme is time. We believe that these dates are kind of far enough out that we can maybe rethink this. I know it's only May at the time, and there's very tight restrictions, but we don't know what it's going to look like in August, and we especially don't know what it's going to look like in 7 months from now in December. And I think Mr. Antelli hit it spot on with that. The kids really just want one last time to be together. With Governor Charlie Baker's directive to close all schools for the academic year, that resulted in all senior privileges and activities being kind of canceled. And that includes the June 5th, 2020 deadline or graduation date. And we, as a class 2020, need someone kind of to bring us home, to something to root for, something to look forward to, and something to kind of keep us motivated to finish our distance learning and power through. And we believe that having a graduation together, graduates first, of course, then the staff, then the parents, would be a great opportunity to say goodbye one last time to our high school, town, and community. And going off that, we polled the students on social media. We also hosted a Q&A session with the class 2020 where they could come and ask questions for a half hour, and they resounded the same song. So they definitely don't want a virtual graduation, and we really just kind of want someone to hope for here. And even parents also believe in the same thing. We also got 18 parent emails highlighting that they also don't want a virtual graduation. They want to see their kids walk across the stage, whether that be on their iPad at home or in a car in a parking lot or in the audience themselves. They just want to see their kids cross that stage, get their diploma. Thank you.
Avery, we also agreed that as a class officers, advisors and so forth, that it would not go beyond January 1st. And again, our officers from the class of 2020 are just class acts, and they realize that going beyond January 1st is just something that we shouldn't try to tackle, and that it would take away from the class of 2021. And again, the class of 2020 is just, they're great students, great leadership, great class advisors, and I just think they're a class act. And knowing that, we have another graduation to worry about a year from now, a year plus, they realized that they would go to a virtual at that point, some sort of virtual graduation and put some closure to the class of 2020. And we're really hoping that we can put the right kind of closure because we think these students deserve it.
Thank you very much. Dean Toomey, did you have something?
Yeah, just to add, I mean, we evaluated all the options. It wasn't just, virtual graduation versus traditional graduation. I mean, there's countless stories and examples from around the country at the college and high school level of how different people are conducting graduations. Whether they're streaming and cutting, people walking across the stage one by one, or doing a drive-by graduation where you have 10 minutes on stage, with 430 seniors in our class and the size of the event of 3,500 people, 3,500 people. I mean, it limits us in certain ways. And Massachusetts is certainly, different than a lot of states around the rest of the country, as other states start to open up more aggressively than I think we have. So there, we talked about all those different things, but again, the three themes that I continued to hear was they wanted to be together, they were willing to wait, and they wanted that moment. They wanted that moment of traditional graduation on a stage, and I mean, that's where we are.
And I appreciate that very much. I did hear from a couple parents who said, please, please, please consider any way possible to let us have an in-person graduation. So I so appreciate the committee's perseverance in trying to figure out a way to do that and sticking with it. I saw a hand go up. Wendy, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yep, I was just going to say that we acknowledge that the dates we chose, we're not going to be able to please everybody. And there might be the opportunity that we can get majority of the students with the date we picked, and we might not get everybody. Kids may need to go to college earlier than that date, but we really looked at the calendar and tried to get as many kids to be able to participate as possible with the dates that we chose.
Again, appreciated. You really looks like you took a very thorough look at all angles of this. So I saw John.
Yeah, just real quick. These guys were very vocal. Okay, this wasn't just not that it wasn't friendly, but these guys jumped on this thing and they were all over it. And Mr. Antonelli, Mr. Toomey, really patient. Everybody's been patient with these guys, and it's a passionate class. It's been that way for 4 years. Matt's been the president for 4 years, and he's got a good following all the way across the board. So if I'm on the committee, how many students were really reached out? There were a lot in all different sectors. So it wasn't just certain students. So as far as that goes, I think we got a nice cross section of students, and it was vocal, and it was back and forth, and it was productive. So I just wanted to throw that out to the committee.
Thank you. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the ghostwriter who has been doing the posts on Facebook. I have found those wonderful. And I hope that even if we have graduation as usual next year, we can still do those again, because I think it's a great way to share with everybody in the community what our seniors have accomplished and where they're headed. And I have to say how much I've enjoyed those. And so with that, do the committee have any questions for this wonderful group who's considering all angles of the graduation options? Ming Chen, did you have go ahead, Ming Chen, then Gloria.
We're really happy that the principal, the deans, and then the class officer actually found a solution. I know that it probably very nerve-wracking for the last couple of weeks or couple months. And we received the parents' email. I totally support the working group between you guys. I think that's a really good example for people to work together in these difficult times.
Thank you.
Gloria, did you have something?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to echo that sentiment. I mean, kudos to you, Matt, and all the senior class officers and everyone on this committee. It's just obvious how much thought has gone into this, and it absolutely reflects what I would expect, is that you guys just want to be together one more time. And even if, parents have to watch, a live stream from home and it can only be the class. It sounds like you're thinking through all the options and all the creative ways of doing it. And if it involves gloves and masks, I mean, you guys will make it work, and you deserve that moment. So I'm just gonna, add a shout out to the universe, to give you guys that moment. So kudos to all of you for taking a really difficult situation and working through it to try and find a solution that was going to work for everybody. I think this is a great plan.
Jim or Bill, do we need a vote on this, or can we just let you guys continue your great work with the class of 2020?
Yeah, no special vote.
Okay, I didn't think so.
I have to say, though, every time I've been to the high school, I've heard nothing but the highest compliments about the class of 2020. Let's make it happen in some way.
Alicia?
So I know you just said we don't need a formal vote to make this happen, but I want to express that I also support this completely. However, I want to add a little caveat in there. If there's something we can do in addition to the physical graduation in August, if there's something we can do for the seniors, either on their last day, I know there's parents talking about doing something like the birthday parades. If there's something we can do for them virtually, in addition to the in-person graduation in August, I would really encourage us to try and figure that out too, because I think just stopping cold turkey when you don't have to turn in any assignments, that's kind of tough too. So I don't want it to be an either or. I want them to have their in-person graduation, but I think their last day needs to be celebrated in some capacity too.
Good point.
Principal Antonelli, can you tell us what is the seniors' last day?
Yes, seniors will, most of the seniors are going to finish up on May 15th.
Okay.
A hard stop for most of the seniors then, and then a portion of the seniors will continue on to finish up some work up to the 22nd, and then we have 3 days planned with guest speakers on the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th, senior week kind of activities.
Oh, great. All right. Thank you.
You've done a great job, again, committing to something that's very, very difficult. I would like to just, if you have an extra minute, just to share some additional dates and so forth, which I'll put out in my Friday email. But, the Westford Academy Boosters is putting together the senior athlete ceremony, which will be virtual. We have NHS coming up, an NHS induction with a guest speaker and all of the books being handed out, somehow, in some way, shape, or form. We have, again, last night is coming up with some ideas about how to provide gifts and blankets to the students. We are going to have our June 4th scholarship night. And one of the things that Mr. Toomey wants is that to be live. So some of us will be at Westford Academy. I am going back and forth with Joyce Crane about whether or not we could social distance and do a live scholarship handout so that recipients could see the scholarships that they received. That's June 4th. June 5th would be a senior awards ceremony, which is all of the department awards, which curriculum coordinators and the deans will be involved with, and guidance counselors. And then June 9th would be grade 11. June 10th would be grade 10. And June 11th would be grade 9. So we are moving forward. We're going to make this as festive as possible, albeit on, virtual and so forth. But we're going to celebrate these students. These students deserve it. Westford Academy is a great place. These students deserve to be recognized, and we're going to press forward. We may not be able to shake hands or bump elbows, but we're going to celebrate all the students we can.
Well, thank you for that. Any questions? Oh, I see a hand. Megan, go ahead.
Jim, I just wanted to know, are the students getting their caps and gowns, and are they being delivered to their homes, or what's happening with that?
Yep. So we're working on that plan, Megan, right now. We've got yearbook distribution that has to happen, caps and gowns, and we have Chromebooks to collect. And we've started to actually open all the lockers, and we're going to box up a lot of the belongings. So we have to figure out the best way. We also have to collect books from senior students as well. So we're working on a plan to make sure that we do it appropriately. And I can share that with the superintendent. He will surely share that with you. And again, as Bill said, we're not doing anything till the 18th, so we have time. Yearbooks are somewhat questionable. They may be coming a little bit later, but we still have to get the Chromebooks back. Last night wants to give out blankets and so forth. So We've got to kind of pull a plan together over the next 2 weeks and see how best to get this done.
Okay, great. I do think, and I'll echo the sentiments as well. I appreciate all the creativity that's going into everyone discussing and certainly listening to the students' wishes, and Matt for reaching out to your fellow classmates. I think that's so important. I have to be honest, it sort of breaks my heart to think about doing this in December when you've all had so much time and many of you have gone off to your next venture. So part of why I asked about the gowns is that's such a symbolic part of it. And I have seen everywhere, as I'm sure you all have, all the different ideas and the front door photography that has become sort of a huge part of this. And so maybe there's some opportunity there to have local photographers or something do a front door photo of graduates with their families or something like that, just to sort of more commemorate it in the moment when it would have been happening for all of our graduates. So, you know, congratulations on all your hard work, and at least you'll have a really, really, really great story to tell for the rest of your
Anything else? Well, thank you again, committee, principal, deans, students, everybody. I mean, it's a group effort, and I thank you very much for staying with it.
Thank you.
And let us know if you need anything from school committee, please.
Will do.
All right, I think we're going to jump next to year-end wrap-up. Bill, is there any other plans we need to talk about?
Well, this Friday, we are actually going to put some structure to the committee that will begin to take a look at how we end the school year. We're going to meet quite often, end the school year this year, and begin next year, whether it's in the traditional mode or whether it's in the remote mode. We're going to have the administration, we'll have staff, we'll have representatives from the teachers union, nurses, guidance, curriculum coordinators, special education. We're looking to have some mental health professionals also, so that we can thoroughly address the social emotional aspect of what this is doing to children, staff members, and families. Our food services and facilities, we're going to have a broad-based committee to discuss as comprehensively as possible how do we address the academic and the social emotional well-being needs of children and families and our staff also. And we want to be as thorough and thoughtful and comprehensive as possible. And we're going to, as I said, this Friday will be the meeting. We're going to put some specific structure to that committee and list out some of the tasks we hope to accomplish in the next 6 weeks and then in the next 12 weeks.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else on any other questions on year end? I think we're going to continue to hear in the next couple of weeks how June is going to look as we hear more from the state and other within our own district. Ingrid, I think you sent us some preliminary information. We want to get the conversation started amongst the committee. We do not expect any decisions tonight, no votes, but we want to start a discussion, maybe 10 or 15 minutes on just what refunds and stipends kind of look like and what we want to think about as far as how we're going to handle that. Ingrid, you want to set the stage? I think you're muted.
One day, once we get used to unmuting ourselves, hopefully we can meet live again. So the refunds obviously apply to our fee-based programs. That's what we're talking about right now. Refunds for activities, field trips, all that are in the works. I actually signed a transfer request to take money out of the savings account into the checking for $347,000 so that WA can send the refund checks to all the families for Disney. So those student activity-based refunds are already in the work. I do ask that families are patient because it does take a long time. The schools and central office, we're all working on staggered schedules and remotely. So, and town hall as well. And town hall is critical in issuing many of these refunds. So if it takes a little longer, please have patience. We are working on it. Program refunds, I included in your packet a schedule. Again, this is just to start the conversation, to give you some idea of some of the decisions that need to be made. Nothing's set in stone. I just tried to capture some of the areas that should be considered and some of the issues that you should think about when going forward with this discussion and eventual decision. Starting with athletics, because the spring sports season never actually started, the spring sports activity or athletic fees were never collected. So in that sense, the timing worked out, so we don't have to issue any athletic fee refunds. Bill and Carrie are meeting in their consultation meeting with WEA to discuss the coaching stipends that would be associated with the spring sports, because there was some work done by some of the coaches in a preseason basis. Moving on, full-day kindergarten. Full-day kindergarten, basically the September payment equates the deposit that families put down in this previous spring, and thereafter they're billed in 3-month increments 3 times. So that last payment that would cover April, May, and June was paid. It was due in February, and that's when most families did pay. Those checks went through because in February, obviously, we had no idea that we'd be in this situation. Some families pay for the full year. So that said, there are 192 participants in full-day kindergarten. The teachers are still being paid, as are the TAs that support those classrooms per DESE guidance. So again, and then those kindergarten fees also offset certain overhead costs running a kindergarten classroom. Extended day kindergarten, as you know, is a slightly different model. The staffing structure is different. Rather than an educational program, it's more an enrichment program. So this, rather than teachers staffing that, teaching assistants do. So it does have a slightly lower cost. The staff is still continued to be paid, particularly until recently when we hoped to return before the end of the year. We needed to keep all the staff in place so we could pivot quickly if we were allowed back to school, which we know now is no longer the case. In the integrated preschool, while there is a special, obviously the intent of it is for special education, there is a fee-based opportunity for students to attend preschool. There's a range of fees that are paid based on full day, half day, and due to actually just a deposit snafu, the April checks were never had to be pulled back before they got fully deposited, which was great because I'd much rather send a check back or ask families if we could avoid it than issue refunds. So those, the preschool really is fairly up to date. And the staff that is currently still working for, the preschool program are focused right now on the special education students that require this support. The bus, we are still negotiating with our bus vendor to ensure that we will have some bus availability when we go back to school. That's an ongoing process right now. So we will continue. I anticipate to have some costs throughout through the end of June. And I just wanted to remind you all that while our bus fee of $275 is no small change, it is only 40% of the total cost of one student riding the bus. The early arrival option, we have before school care is another term for it. That staff is also at this point being paid out of that revolving account for, again, in anticipation that we might have gone back to school. We kept this, and per DESE guidance, we kept staff on to be able to pivot quickly if we went back to school. Student activities.
Is Ingrid frozen or is it me?
It's Ingrid.
Yeah, she's frozen.
All right.
Yeah, for you.
All right, am I back?
Okay, she's back.
Am I back? All right, I purposely am in the office because I've had so much trouble, but I'm cursed, obviously. Maybe it's my laptop. Student activities, the fee is for as many activities as a student wishes to participate in. It's one time, generally paid at the beginning of the year, and then students can join as many clubs as they like. Again, Bill and Carrie will be working with WEA to talk about the prorated stipend for the club advisors. Obviously, so the way the stipends for advisors work, it's paid twice a year, generally in December, and then the second half paid in May. So all the advisors were paid in December. They obviously worked fully until school closure, and then we've been working with leadership and the advisors and polling people who finished their entire club obligation before school closure, who was still working remotely with their clubs. Some clubs are going to work until the very end, such as the classes, student council, yearbook. And so we've worked hard to identify which ones would receive the prorated stipend that would compensate them for the amount of work that they did January, February, and the half of March, and then those that have been doing more or fulfilled their entire activity obligation. 3 through 5 strings music, I hear that they are continuing to play remotely as they can organize it. And WA parking is obviously, there are no cars in the lot right now, but the $50 fee turns out to be 28 cents a day. So it's a pretty good deal. And so that's a rundown of the refunds that you have to consider.
So one of the questions actually is about the stipends, and I'm hoping that you or Bill can answer. Why are advisors to the same or similar clubs at different schools receiving different percentages for stipends when they have done the same percentage of work? And maybe this person needs to take it offline and ask specifically.
Yeah, we'd have to check on that because we've looked very carefully. We've consulted with the people in the schools in terms of who's put in what time with what organization. And so if there's some variability there, we'll have to follow up on that one.
Who's the best person, a principal or the central office?
The principal.
Principal? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, when we were all talking to the various schools, questioned the same, just, oh, well, it's, in my finance land here, band is band, maybe, but, each school does run programs differently, so.
Okay. All right. And the other question that had popped up was the difference between full day and half day kindergarten in the remote learning plan. I believe we heard last week from Carrie that they are receiving a slightly different kind of distance learning. And can we address that? And does that factor into the refunds at all? Carrie, I don't know if you caught the end of that.
Yep.
The difference in the full day and half day.
Yeah, we did look into that. Bill asked us to talk about that at our leadership team meeting, and the real difference for the most part is just the amount of face time with teachers. For half-day students, they don't have quite as much access to the live time as the full-day students. However, the curriculum and the assignments that's being delivered is the same, because our content standards for kindergarten are the same whether we're half-day or full-day. So we didn't think that there was a large enough difference.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Other first round questions, understanding that it's getting late, we still have stuff to cover, but I can't thank Ingrid enough for breaking this out and telling us basically recommendations and supporting information. Very, very helpful in these what could be difficult decisions.
Well, and again, this is a jumping off point. So if there are questions that you think of after, even after the meeting, just email me and I'll keep compiling this so we can make this a live document if that would be helpful.
That sounds great. Alicia, did you have a question?
Just a quick suggestion, actually, because we're already starting to look to whether or not we'll actually be in physical buildings in the fall, whether or not there will be a resurgence, that I'd like to suggest that as we start to decide these things for this year, let's try and get a plan in place for what next year will look like so that parents know ahead of time if there's going to be any kind of time tipping point. Will we be out for X amount? So the parents know going forward what next year will look like. And I say that because I've had some parents say to me, if it looks like we may be out for big chunks of next year, I'm not paying for full day kindergarten. It doesn't make any sense. So I think knowing what we will be willing to do next year and sort of laying out all the options for the parents is going to be key.
Yep. What precedent are we setting now?
Very good point.
I just want to add on to what Alicia said. I think it might also be worth considering that whatever decision we make now regarding some of these fees could really be because we didn't see this coming. No one saw this coming. Next year, everyone will kind of have a better understanding of the risks. So I think as long as we're transparent with everyone, I don't think whatever decision we make now has to be the same decision going forward. As long as we're able to notify parents about the risk in advance and about how these matters have worked in advance, they wouldn't necessarily have to be the same going forward. And that's just worth keeping in mind. So it might give us some more options.
Sorry, connectivity issues.
It's okay. We were just saying that whatever we decide now, we should be able to apply or not apply next year, and just sort of, now that we know that this is a possibility, be able to put, give the parents answers ahead of time versus reacting to something we had no idea was coming.
Absolutely.
So very good. I don't think we need, but thank you again, Ingrid. So very helpful. And so as people think of things, let Ingrid know, and we will take a vote on this next time, Ingrid. Or you?
I think that would be good. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we'll, it seems so far away, but we're going to butt up to the end of the year very quickly.
Yes, we are. And next time, I believe we meet on May 18th. So that will be another turning point statewide to see where we are. Moving ahead, we have the WEA teachers contract, I believe, Bill.
Well, Gloria, since you sort of took the lead in this, do you want to discuss this one?
Thank you. Thank you very much. We engaged in negotiations with the WEA this year. This would have been the normal time when we would have gone through our negotiation process and under normal standards would have entered into a new 3-year contract with the WEA Unit A teachers. Unfortunately, those negotiations were really cut short by this pandemic and the closures and social distancing. And so the agreement that we have reached between the school system and the WEA is to enter into a 1-year successor agreement, which basically takes the current contract language of the current contract, which was 2017 through 2020, and extends that contract for 1 year. So by doing that, we would have the same language, the same rights and obligations for both parties, for the school and for the union. And that way we will have an active contract for our teachers. The one change to the contract is all of our Unit A members would be receiving a 2% cost of living adjustment increase in over and above their compensation for this year. So that was the agreement that we have reached. I think that is a very positive agreement for both sides. It gives all of our staff some certainty moving into next year, and it allows us to put some of the other proposals and issues that had been discussed during this negotiation just temporarily on ice. And then when we are able to get back together in a more traditional negotiation session, we can revisit those issues in the fall and look forward to a brand new contract for successive years. So that is our proposal to you tonight.
And thank you again, Gloria. She really, you took this one and you took it over the goal line. And I think I've told you that many times, and we can't thank you enough for really sticking with it and getting this one done. You were in the packet, you will have seen a rate sheet, which is, I believe, the 2% increase to our Unit A. That is also matches what the town is currently following guidelines for in increases in units. So we are just sort of, as Gloria said, we're holding the course. So we need a motion to approve holding the course. Oh, Ming-Chen, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a hypothetical question.
Okay.
Because, for example, if we don't have town meeting happening in June, and then by the governor's order, we are only allowed to spend 1/12 of the money for the last school year budget. And if that's the case, where are we going to get the 2% of the money from?
That's something, Ming-Chen, that we would work out with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, since we would have a collective bargaining agreement in place that we have to meet, and we have to meet that commitment.
And other units are going to have the same problem. Ingrid, I saw your hand go up.
Well, and also keep in mind that contract goes until the end of August.
The current contract.
Right.
So this
so
is
the new
September
contract wouldn't
1st.
take place until the beginning.
Right.
Gloria, I don't know the date, August 26th, something like that.
Right. So basically, by the end of summer, we will have some answer regarding whether we can afford a contract.
Well, by tonight, we're saying we will be agreeing to an increase. It's not that we can't. We're saying tonight that we will be paying them this amount. We're saying that as far as without a town meeting, there will be mechanisms put into place to make the increases above the 1/12 until we can get to a town meeting.
So can someone educate me about the mechanism? Because I need to know that when we sign a contract, then we will have funds available if town meeting is not happening.
Well, we will have the funds available when the contract begins and when the school year begins, because even though we have contracts, other contracts, like for example, the bus company and whatnot, we only encumber that money. We don't liquidate all that money over the course of the year. So the money is in sources of funds are in the budget. Now, that doesn't preclude us, based on fiscal conditions, from having to look at either revenue enhancement or cost cutting, like all other departments down the road. But we will be able to, at the inception of the fiscal year, to meet the obligation of that contract.
Yes.
To clarify, the current contract does go through August 31st. Though the one-year successor agreement would go into effect on September 1. So hopefully we would be able to have a town meeting by that time. If we aren't able to have a town meeting by that time, I mean, obviously I think I'm going to phone a friend with Ingrid in terms of the mechanics. But
I want to know the mechanics now.
But as Bill indicated, we our FY21 budget included compensation reserves that cover the full cost of this contract.
Right, but he's concerned that we're living off of FY, the current one, which does not reflect the 2%, and that we're living off a 1/12 of that as of July 1st. And so how are we going to pay an increase on September 1st if we're living off of a 1/12 from the current year? Is that correct, Ming-Chen?
Exactly, because without a town meeting, we don't have a budget.
And I understand you need to know the mechanisms. Not all the mechanisms have been worked out yet, as we this is new for everybody, including the select board and the FinCom and everybody else. Ingrid, do you have something else?
So, I mean, there are two issues here. One's the cash flow issue, which I think Bill was addressing, that, you know, we wouldn't, you know, we don't need all the money, obviously, on day one.
Correct.
But then I think, Ming-Chen, what you're referring to is just, you know, having comfort that we will have the funds. So yes, this is a commitment of the 2% for a large, you know, labor is a vast majority, 88% of our budget. If for some reason next year the budget has to be cut, we hope not, but you know, we have Chapter 70 may come in lower. There are all sorts of scenarios we just don't know. We may have to adjust our fiscal 21 budget, and you know, we have many contracts in our budgets that we would have to honor. So it is, you know, it's a concern, but it's something that would really should be looked at in a larger sense than as a whole town.
Yeah, I just want to play out a scenario so that, for example, if we need to make adjustment back in September or October, does that mean like staff reduction? Does that mean like we have to cut programs? Does that mean like we have to renegotiate a contract?
Well, it depends on what. I mean, right now we have an approved budget is what we voted on, and we are waiting for town to approve that. And so I don't think there are necessarily answers to all of these questions tonight. And I know that makes us, I mean, it makes some of us uneasy, not having everything tacked down right now. But we also have to trust in, Ingrid knows the numbers. She knows what we have, what we don't have, where we're functioning, and that we're working hand in hand with the town manager, the select board, to figure this out, because we're not the only ones who have these contracts and these units that need to be met. So this will be an ongoing discussion. I suspect we'll talk about it a little bit the next 2 Tuesdays with the select board.
So I just want to weigh in too. I've already indicated, I think, and I'll continue to bring more information as I have more analysis done. You know, some of the choices that we will make at the end of the year, this year, perhaps if we are able to prepay some tuition and things like that, can help us in 21. So right now we really need to look at both years. And so the decisions that are made in 20 will potentially really help or hurt us in 21.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, thanks. That's very helpful. I just want to like make myself a little bit comfortable, because I don't want us to revisit contract, like for example, in 3 months, or like 3 months later, we'll have to do staff reduction.
Great.
So right now the town is still going with their current revenue projections. I talk to Dan O'Donnell almost daily, and you know, right now, until we hear otherwise, I mean, there's certain minor adjustments that are already being made. Obviously, our receipts from the hotel and meal tax revenue is down, but again, it's fluid, and you know, I wish we had a crystal ball. Trust me, it would make my life so much happier, but and we all, you know, hate the uncertainty, but I think, you know, we just have to take it in bites that we can stomach right now.
And keep communicating with all parties involved.
Thank you.
The one thing I'd add, Ming Chen, I certainly acknowledge the uncertainties of some of the situations we're in. But you know, as me and Sean and Bill and Carrie and Ingrid, Avery, everyone who sat at the table across from the union can attest. These were really positive negotiations. It's unfortunate that we had to interrupt them and weren't able to conclude them in a more traditional fashion. But these were really positive negotiations, and I think by entering into this successor agreement, we are really affirming our good faith to continue negotiating with the union moving forward, and we are also doing important honor to our commitment as a committee and as a town to equitable teacher pay, which was affirmed by the voters in 2017. So I know we're in an uncertain situation, and I understand that does make people nervous, but I would encourage the committee to approve this agreement for all those reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And we are voting on what has been agreed to by the negotiating team. I do not believe this has been ratified by the membership of the WEA. Is that correct still, Bill?
I believe that's correct, but they have the authority to make the decision. Yeah.
But I just wanted to be clear what we're voting on. Okay.
So in the packet, actually there is a signature from WEA.
Correct. That was the lead. That was Christine was the head of their delegation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a housekeeping issue on that. The document in the packet is the second page of a 2-page agreement. We may want to update the packet so that it has both pages. I assume that was just a glitch. But the committee has a copy of the full 2 pages, as it's a very simple agreement extending the current contract language.
Mm-hmm.
So if everybody is okay, we can take a motion to approve the 1-year extension of the WEA Unit A contract.
So moved.
Second. Okay. Roll call. Megan?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Aye. So we have approval on the Unit A. And again, thank you to Gloria, who headed this, Sean, who sat at the table with us all, and Bill, Ingrid, everybody. We got it done. So now let's just get through this pandemic.
I feel like this is an Oscars speech. Shout out to Jen Burke in Human Resources.
Oh, yes. Right. She's not on the screen. Very good call.
And everybody watching?
And everybody watching. And my parents. No, we'll leave it there. Okay. Chris, are you up for warrants?
Motion to approve payroll warrant number 2045 SP dated May 7th, 2020 in the amount of $2,001,044.50.
Second.
All in favor? Ming Chen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Me? Yep. Second one.
Did you get Sean?
Did I get Sean? Aye. Sorry. I try to follow like on the screen, but.
Motion to approve expense warrant number 2045 SE dated May 7th, 2020 in the amount of $416,124.61.
Second.
All in favor. Sean.
Aye.
Gloria.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Big Chen.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Megan.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Chris. Do you have the motion?
Were we doing minutes? We have minutes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see those. Yep,
Yeah,
minutes.
motion to approve school committee meeting minutes from regular session on April 21st, 2020.
Second.
All in favor. Gloria.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Megan.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
A unanimous vote on minutes. Okay, now.
Motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. An open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position. The committee will not return to public session.
Roll call. Ming Chen.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Megan.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Gloria.
Aye.
We are adjourned. We will see you on the other side.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thanks.
Good night.